I'll look at. I think that there's a fair bit of stress that's been reduced with the removal of the at least phase-year acceptance of moving from January the 1st, 2021 to 22. Education degree qualification moving from 24 to 26. I think that's been a real release of pressure. The amount of stress that the industry's been under, let alone at a moment of crisis. I think that's been a great relief. I suppose, whilst again we started off fairly dark as to where we potentially have been or are, I actually think that the future looks fantastic. I think there's going to be a restoration in trust with the banks exiting, and that was fairly significant trust level that was betrayed. So I think that we're going to see that. I think that also the greater corporate governance will be there. Greater education requirements will also increase consumer confidence. And at the same time, as we've talked about through this, is we're building better businesses with client outcomes being the start and the finish objective. We're seeing rising need for advice. And so I'm actually really positive about the future. We've still got some challenges. Obviously, the LIF review, ASIC review, is a significant challenge that we need to face. My hope is that rational decisions will be made, that we'll actually see our industry hopefully come together and fight for at least retention of what we have at the moment. There's plenty of international examples. There's chronic underinsurance at the moment. And again, I can't see any beneficiary to the consumer by changing it. So the hope is that our associations will get together. They'll fight like the mortgage industry did, and lobby effective. So that's still on our horizons. But again, I'm an optimist, but
you're a glass half full kind of guy, eh?
Yeah, I am, but I think that with politicians are starting to really look that they potentially have killed or trying to kill one of the core sectors of our community, namely financial advisors. Why risk advisors need to complete the same level of education makes no sense. So there's still these inequalities, but we seem to be getting heard a lot more by the politicians now. And I think it's because of the way that we've dealt with this crisis and risen to it.
I think the other side of it is too, it's, the insurance companies, this hasn't worked out the way that they wanted it to work out either. So they've, all of this was, the thing that baffles me is all this was there for blind Freddie to see at the start. Everyone knew what was going to happen. It happened overseas. We all thought it's going to be different here, and it never is. It's the same thing. And, insurance isn't getting written. Insurance is the classic Ponzi scheme. If you don't have new money coming in, it's lights out. So, all of this sort of stuff's the unintended consequence of these actions. Unfortunately, I don't think the politicians have got the strength to actually go, yep, we've stuffed this up and let's wind a bit of it back. I think they'll double down on a losing hand just from what I've seen. But in saying that, it is what it is, and you've got to play the ball on its own merits. And hopefully that's not the case. But in saying that, there's also opportunity that comes from that. And that's what I'm telling the young guys in the industry. Like, it's, just hang in there, get through this, because the pendulum's going to swing completely your way. Because there's still people trying to figure out how they pay for their house, how they save for retirement, how they make all their financial decisions. And until that stops, we've got a future.
Absolutely. And less people in there, more barriers to entry.
Correct. We've actually got a closed shop.
Yeah.
So we've got a closed shop.
It's actually affirming for valuations, and it's firming. And I also believe that we are taking quantum steps to professionalism and acceptance of professionalism as well. And this is where I think it's that this breach of trust is now being is this, and I think that the respect that's coming through from the wider community, and also I'd say from the political side as well. But
yeah, but then again, like when you break it down, most of that was as a result of the bad behaviour of the banks. You know, and there was another article today. The banks have, you know, ASIC aren't going to pursue the banks, and you know, it's sort of. I don't know. It just, to me, the fact that banks left has probably been the greatest change in the industry per se, and will lead to the most positive outcomes. You know, putting aside lift reforms, fascia, all the other stuff put together. The fact that the banks are gone, I think that's probably going to be far more significant benefit to the industry because they behaved poorly and there was no repercussions for it.
And we've seen the greatest level of disruption in our industry in the 30 plus years I've been doing it. And it's positive because we're seeing what was, you know, the 70% controlled by the big six is now flipping. So 70% will be independent.
Yeah.
And you won't just get this homogenized sausage factories, you know, putting out a single product for all. You know, it's actually going to be tailored advice and better advice. So that's one of the many reasons why I'm really positive about it, the future.
Well, let's hope that you're right, Steve. Let's hope that you're right. Because let's face it, after this coronavirus, mate, we're going to have the country saddled with a lot of debt. We've got a lot of issues. It's, you know, it's not going to be, the next 10, 20 years is not going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be a hard slog, and how we navigate these waters and come back from all of this stuff. There's going to be a lot of pressures on the tax base, how the politicians going to pay for this. People are paying more taxes. How can they afford to provide for themselves? How can they do their own thing? You know, these are the things that we're going to be addressing over the next decade or so.
But also that underlines the need for advice. And
absolutely.
And you know, they're saying advice is getting too expensive for Australians, and that's why we've only got about 20% of the population. But part of this re-engineering is a number of businesses that are coming out that are really quite low cost and high sort of touch, designed specifically for millennials or Gen X, Gen Y. The robo advice, we haven't really seen any successful examples to date. But robo and advice, you know, is coming, and I think that many will import parts of that into their business for a certain part of their client base. So again, I think we've got technology solutions, and there is innovation within our marketplace.
Yeah, and innovation's got to be encouraged. And the thing that often worries me about conversations in our industry, it's about people saying that you've got to do it this way, you've got to do it that way. Well, innovation is all about offering the market different ways, and the market decides what they want.
Yeah, and
it's not for people in ivory towers or on keyboards to decide what the world should be doing. Millions of people will make that decision far more collectively better than any of us individually.
Agreed. And it should be market-led.
Yep, absolutely. You know, let the market do it. But there is, and that's where I think at the moment where, you know, regulation has gone too far. I understand where the regulation come from, and there definitely needed to be some changes, absolutely, but it can go too far. And hopefully, you know, over the next little period of time, we can sort of get back to focusing on client outcomes as opposed to worrying about, you know, whether we're going to lose our license and we haven't got a box ticked, which is a real concern for guys in the modern era.
Particularly those that are still within the big companies where their compliance is actually greater than legal requirements. And compliance is on top and not on tap. You know, every decision is made by via compliance. And that completely stops innovation.
Yeah.